You didn't wake up one day and decide to sin. That's not how it works. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And now, the thing you barely question anymore might be the very thing God takes most seriously. Not the obvious sins, not the dramatic ones, something much more normal. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. The sin that doesn't feel like sin. Most people think sin feels heavy, something obvious, something that hits you like a bad decision you immediately regret. Guilt, shame, that uncomfortable feeling in your chest that tells you you messed up. But what if the worst kind of sin doesn't feel like that at all? What if it feels comfortable, routine, something you do without thinking, like reaching for your phone before your eyes are even fully open? You don't even remember deciding to do it. It just happens. Like saying, "I'll deal with that later," and somehow feeling relieved, as if you've solved something when you've actually just postponed it. Or that quiet moment when you know something is off, you feel it for a second, then you move on. You scroll, you distract yourself, you let the feeling pass. Not because it disappeared, but because you chose not to follow it. That's the kind that slips through. Not because it's small, but because it doesn't demand your attention. You don't fight it. You don't even recognize it as something worth fighting. You just live with it. And here's the strange part. The more normal it feels, the less you question it. And the less you question it, the more it blends into who you are. It stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like your personality. Like, this is just how I am now. That's where it gets dangerous. Because once something feels like part of you, you stop resisting it completely. You defend it. You justify it. You even forget there was a time when it felt wrong. It's a bit like leaving a small stain on your shirt. At first you notice it, it bothers you. Then after a few hours, you stop seeing it. Not because it's gone, but because your mind got used to it. So what is this sin? Not something loud or dramatic, not the kind people argue about, something quiet, something you barely notice, something almost invisible. It starts with small compromises. Nobody jumps straight into darkness. That would be too obvious, too easy to catch. It's always a small step first, something so minor you barely register it as a decision. You ignore a thought that made you uncomfortable. You delay a decision you already know the answer to. You avoid something that quietly matters, something you would rather not face today. And in that moment, you tell yourself something that sounds harmless, almost responsible. It's not that serious. That sentence has probably caused more damage than people realize. Not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it feels reasonable. It sounds like balance, like maturity, like you're choosing peace over overreaction. But look closer. How many things in your life started with that exact phrase? You say you will fix your habits next week. You will have that difficult conversation later. You will finally deal with that one issue that keeps showing up again and again. And somehow, later keeps moving. Like a horizon you never quite reach. It's a bit like saying, you will start eating healthy next Monday. And then another Monday comes. And another. At some point, it almost becomes a tradition. Not the healthy eating part, just the planning. Funny. But also slightly painful when you sit with it. Because these small compromises don't feel like rebellion. They don't feel like you're doing something wrong. They feel like life. Like being human. Like managing your energy and picking your battles. But here's the quiet shift most people miss. Each time you say it's not that serious, you are training yourself to lower the importance of what you know is right. Not in a dramatic way. In a subtle, almost invisible way. And repetition matters. Because what you repeat, you reinforce. Over time, the line between what matters and what can wait starts to blur. And once that line fades, something else fades with it. Your sensitivity to truth. Your ability to act when it actually counts. And that leads somewhere most people never expect. Not into sudden chaos, but into a slow, unnoticed drift. The death of awareness. At first, you notice it. That quiet inner voice that doesn't shout, but doesn't go away either. It's subtle, almost easy to ignore, but it shows up at the right moments. That slight discomfort, that pause before you act, that feeling of, this isn't right, even if you can't fully explain why. And in the beginning, it's actually quite clear. You feel it when you avoid something important. You feel it when you say something you didn't mean. You feel it when you choose the easier path over the honest one. It doesn't ruin your day, but it leaves a mark, just enough to remind you that something is off. But here's what happens over time. If you ignore it once, nothing changes. Ignore it twice, still manageable. Ignore it 10 times, and something starts to shift, not outside, inside. Because that voice doesn't fight for your attention, it doesn't get louder, it does the opposite. It fades. Not because the problem disappeared, and not because you suddenly became right, but because you stopped listening. And when something is consistently ignored, the mind adapts by turning down its volume. This is where it becomes dangerous. Because now, you don't feel wrong anymore. There's no friction, no tension, no signal telling you to stop or reconsider. Everything feels smooth, easy. You feel normal. And when something feels normal, you stop questioning it. You stop examining it. You stop resisting it. It becomes part of your baseline. It's like living next to a train track. At first, every passing train feels unbearable. The noise interrupts everything. You notice it, react to it, maybe even complain about it. But give it enough time, and something strange happens. You stop hearing it. The trains are still passing. The noise is still there. But your mind has learned to filter it out. Not because it's gone, but because it has become familiar. And familiarity is powerful. Because once you adapt to something, you stop seeing it as a problem. You start seeing it as reality. And that adaptation, that quiet adjustment where wrong no longer feels wrong, might be the real sin, not the action itself, but the loss of awareness that was supposed to protect you from it. It's not what you do, it's what you ignore. Most people focus on actions. What they did, what they said, what they shouldn't have done. It's clean, measurable, easy to point at. You can list it, confess it, even compare it to others and quietly feel a little better. But the deeper issue rarely shows up on that list. It hides in what you refuse to face, the conversation you keep postponing because it might get uncomfortable, the truth you already understand but keep pushing to the side because it asks something from you, the change that keeps tapping you on the shoulder, and you keep pretending not to hear. This isn't loud rebellion. There's no dramatic moment, no clear line crossed. It's passive resistance, calm on the outside, but quietly misaligned underneath. And oddly enough, it's more dangerous. Because you can still feel like a good person while doing it. You're not lying, not hurting anyone, not causing visible damage. You're functioning, you're polite. You're doing what's expected. On paper, everything looks fine. But something is missing. You're not moving, not growing, not stepping into what you already know is right. And because nothing visibly breaks, you assume nothing is wrong. That's the illusion. Because doing nothing feels neutral, safe, even, like staying still protects you from making mistakes. But stillness has a direction too. It just doesn't announce it. It's a bit like ignoring a small leak in your home. There's no flood, no panic. Just a slow drip you tell yourself you'll fix later. Days pass, then weeks. The surface still looks fine. Until one day, the damage shows up all at once, and it feels sudden, unexpected. But it wasn't sudden. It was ignored. That's where the contradiction hits. Because doing nothing, especially when you know better, is not harmless. It slowly shapes your life in the background. Quietly, consistently. And over time, what you ignore doesn't stay small. It grows into the very thing you thought you were avoiding. The sin of delay. There's a pattern most people never notice. It doesn't look like rebellion. It doesn't sound like defiance. In fact, it often sounds polite, reasonable, even wise. They don't say no to what's right. That would feel too direct, too final. They say, later. I'll fix it later. I'll apologize later. I'll start taking this seriously later. And every time they say it, there's a quiet sense of relief, like pressure has been lifted, like they've handled the situation without actually having to face it. But that relief is misleading. Because later is not neutral. It feels like a delay, but in reality, it's a decision. A soft rejection that doesn't look like rejection. Later is the most polite way to say no to truth. And the reason it works so well is because it sounds responsible. It gives you the illusion of control. You're not ignoring the problem, you're just scheduling it. Like putting it in a mental calendar that never quite gets opened. It's a bit like saying, you'll clean the garage next weekend. The plan feels good. You might even tell someone about it. But somehow, next weekend turns into next month. And the garage stays exactly the same, just slightly more crowded each time. Funny how that works. But here's what most people don't see. Time doesn't freeze just because you delayed something. The situation doesn't pause. Your habits don't wait. Your direction doesn't stay still. Delay moves you, quietly, and it compounds. Like interest on a loan, except you don't notice the cost building up. There's no statement in the mail, no warning message. Just small consequences, stacking on top of each other, hidden behind normal days. Until one day, something feels off. You look around your life, and it doesn't match what you thought it would be. Not dramatically wrong, just not right. And that's the unsettling part. People rarely end up somewhere terrible overnight. They drift there. Slowly, one postponed decision at a time. And by the time they realize it, they're not where they thought they'd be. They're somewhere they never planned to go. And if you trace it back far enough, it rarely starts with a big mistake. It starts with one quiet word. Later. Why this sin is so easy to justify. Here's why this one is so dangerous. It doesn't make you look bad. There's no visible damage, no clear mistake, nothing you can easily point to and say, that's the problem. You can still smile, still function, still show up, do your job, talk to people, be seen as reliable. From the outside, everything looks completely fine. In fact, you might even look more put together than most. No one sees it, and sometimes, not even you. Because this doesn't hide behind bad behavior. It hides behind logic. It sounds intelligent, measured, responsible. I'm tired. It's not the right time. I need to think more before I act. And to be fair, sometimes those things are true. Sometimes rest is needed. Sometimes waiting is wise. Sometimes thinking things through is the right move. But here's where it shifts. When those reasons become your default, they stop being wisdom and start becoming a shield. Not a shield that protects you, but one that protects you from facing what you already know. Because if you look closely, most of the time you're not confused. You're not lacking clarity. You already know what needs to be done. You just don't want to deal with what comes with it. The discomfort, the effort, the possibility of things changing. So instead, the mind does something clever. It dresses avoidance up as intelligence. It gives you a reason that sounds good enough to stop questioning yourself. And once that pattern sets in, it becomes automatic. You don't even realize you're doing it. You just keep postponing, reframing, explaining. Everything makes sense on the surface, but nothing actually moves forward. And this is the turning point. Because once avoidance becomes your default, you're no longer actively choosing your life. You're reacting to it, delaying it, letting it shape itself without your input. You're drifting. And drifting feels calm at first. There's no pressure, no urgency, just a quiet sense that things are under control. But drifting always leads somewhere, not because you chose a direction, but because you stopped choosing at all. And that's why it rarely leads somewhere good. The real cost no one talks about. This is where it gets uncomfortable. Not dramatic, not explosive, just quietly unsettling. Because the cost doesn't show up right away. There's no alarm, no clear moment where everything breaks. It's subtle, almost polite. You lose clarity first. Decisions that used to feel simple start to feel foggy. You overthink small things, then avoid the big ones. You tell yourself you're just tired, maybe need a break. Then direction starts slipping. You're still moving, still busy, still doing things. But if someone asked you why you're doing them, the answer wouldn't be very clear. And slowly, that sharp sense of purpose fades. Not gone, just dull. Life starts to feel flat. Not terrible. You're not in crisis. Bills are paid, conversations happen, days pass. From the outside, everything looks fine. But inside, something feels slightly off. Like walking into a room and forgetting why you came in. That small, irritating feeling, except now it's not a moment. It's a pattern. And people try to fix that feeling. More entertainment, more scrolling, more background noise to fill the silence, because silence tends to bring that feeling back, and nobody really enjoys sitting with it. It's almost funny in a strange way. You can spend hours scrolling through other people's lives while quietly avoiding your own. Efficient distraction, zero progress. But the feeling doesn't go away. Because it's not caused by a lack of stimulation, it's caused by something being ignored. It's like putting a bandage on a crack in the wall. From a distance, everything looks fine, clean, intact, even presentable. But the structure underneath hasn't changed, and over time, pressure builds, slowly, invisibly. Until one day, the bandage doesn't hold anymore. And now the problem feels bigger than it should have been. Heavier, harder to face. Not because life suddenly became difficult, but because something important was left unattended for too long. The truth most people avoid. So here it is. The sin you think is normal is not a specific action. It's not one mistake you can point to, fix, and move on from. It's a pattern, a habit, something woven quietly into everyday life. It's the habit of ignoring what you already know is right. Not what others told you, not what you read somewhere, what you already felt, clearly, at some point. That quiet voice that shows up without effort. That small nudge that doesn't argue, doesn't force, but also doesn't disappear easily. That uncomfortable truth. You've heard it before, more than once. Probably at moments when everything slowed down just enough for it to surface. And for a second, it made things very clear. Then life continued. And each time you chose not to act on it, something subtle changed. Not outside, inside. Because the longer you ignore that voice, the quieter it becomes. Not because it has nothing to say, but because it has learned you're not listening. And eventually, it stops interrupting you. This is the part most people never connect. They wake up one day and feel disconnected, not from others, but from themselves. Things that used to matter don't feel as meaningful. Decisions feel heavier, but less clear. There's a sense that something is missing, but no obvious reason why. So they look for answers outside. Maybe they need a change of environment. Maybe they need something new, something exciting. Maybe they just need a break. But the issue isn't a lack of options, it's a loss of alignment. Because that inner signal, the one that used to guide you, has been slowly turned down, not removed, just ignored enough times that it no longer reaches you the same way. And the strange part is this. It wasn't taken from you. No one removed it. Nothing external broke it. It faded, quietly, gradually, almost respectfully. While you were busy, distracted, moving forward in ways that looked fine on the surface, and now, the silence you feel isn't empty. It's the echo of something you stopped listening to. This isn't about guilt. Guilt keeps you stuck in the past. Awareness brings you back to the present. Because the moment you notice it again, really notice it, something shifts. You're no longer drifting without realizing it. You're awake to it. And that changes everything. You don't need a dramatic reset. No long speeches, no complicated systems, no perfect plan that starts next month and quietly disappears. You've probably tried that already. It's simpler than that. Just one honest decision. One thing you've been avoiding for longer than you'd like to admit. One step you already know you should take, even if it's small, even if it's uncomfortable. That's enough. Because direction doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from acting on what you already understand. That's where it begins again, quietly. No audience, no announcement, just a small return to something real. Just like it drifted away, except this time, you're paying attention.